Welcome back to my series of tomato tips to get nice tomatoes. First here, let me show you our tomatoes right now in their current state. They are doing really nicely. We've got lots of tomatoes coming on. You can see those there, but yeah, some really nice plants. The plants are looking great. Look at those tomatoes, very early in the season, and we've got great crop coming on. So, to start things off, I'm going to talk about this business of trimming up the bottoms of the plants. You can see as I've been going along, I've been doing this, cutting these bottom leaves off. To get some space at the bottom, to get air flowing, but we're not quite there yet. So the first, I think this week though, I am going to put the final touches on what I've been doing. So as the plants have been growing, I've been going along, and as I'm thinning and staking up the plants, I've been coming along and clipping off these bottom branches. They get in the way of airflow getting to the plants, and to also keep the leaves from getting blight, which tomatoes are susceptible to. The rule of thumb is usually that you go to the bottom cluster of tomatoes and you clip off all the bottom branches to the node that's above it. I will sometimes do that, and sometimes I'll just leave the bottom ones, the one beneath it, like in this case here, where you see there's the cluster and then there's the bottom branch. I may or may not leave that branch. Right now I'm going to leave it. In some cases the first cluster of tomatoes is quite high up, like in this case here. And so I definitely won't take all of those bottom branches off, because I feel like that's too high up the plant. But I'll take a couple beneath that out to, roughly about, I would say, a foot or so, 8 inches to a foot of clear space there. See, I've forgotten one on this side, so I'll get rid of that one. And so now that's pretty much as high as I want to go with removing leaves. But that's a good height. That gives this plant a lot of air. You can hoe underneath it. You can see the weeds. I'll pull out a couple of weeds here. And I think that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it, and that's probably where you want it to be. So just use that bottom cluster of tomatoes as your rough guideline as to where you want to stop clipping these out. See, and here again, the cluster is fairly high up. I'm not going to go right up to that top cluster there, to that bottom cluster, I should say. Because I think that's too many leaves taken off. Still want to leave something for the plant. Maybe later on, as the growing season continues, I might climb up a little further once the plant itself gets more top growth. I may revisit that, but for now I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm going to say that foot or so is probably all I'm going to take out. I think that's plenty of room. Okay, and as always, I go through and on a day-by-day basis almost, I go through and I take out any little tiny sucker that keeps coming up. They always keep coming, so you got to be sort of fairly vigilant about. By now they're usually only showing up at the top nodes there, but there they are. They keep coming, so make sure you get rid of those in between the branch and the main stem here. Keeping this top one, that's your main leader. That one should stay. Don't remove that. That's the one you're following up the stake with. Another trick, which is a fun little thing to do, you treat your tomato plants like they are little pets. You find wherever you have your series of flowers coming up, and you tap them on the head with your fingers like this. That promotes pollination. So as I'm going along, again, it's sort of like daily thing. I come by and I just give my little flowers a tap on the head like this. If you check online, you'll see some folks will use a toothbrush, an electric toothbrush, to do this job. I don't feel that's necessary, because who's walking around with an electric toothbrush? This is just as fast and it works just as well. And it's something that you can do as you're walking along, just checking your plants out. You see the little flowers, and you just give them a quick tap on the head like this. We started to do this last year, a little bit late, and we saw results. We saw way more tomatoes growing than we've had in the past, but we had changed other things too, so we weren't sure. This was exactly one of the things that helped. But this year, I have to say that I've been doing this right from the beginning, and I've never seen so many tomato clusters this early, and they just keep wanting to come. So I have to believe that this has been definitely helping out. Like, we've got some really nice sized clusters, and lots of them. That presumably that's what happens when you tap the flower heads, is that they just keep stringing the tomatoes along. They just keep going. Look at this here. Look how many little tomatoes coming on, and the flower heads are still going. So usually we've had in the past, it stops at 3 or 4 clusters on a branch, but by tapping these, they seem to want to just keep growing, keep sending up more flowers, more tomatoes. So that's a fun little thing to do. Just go walk along, give your heads a tap, and away you go. So there's that. And the last thing, of course, is as what I've been saying before, tying up the vines. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but this one's, if you start to see it growing like sideways away from the stake, that's definitely a time to start tying. In this case, I tied them up last week, but they've just grown like crazy. They've grown like a foot this week, with all the heat coming on, and we've been keeping them regularly watered, so that seems to be translating into some really nice top growth here. So they've all kind of gotten away from me. Also, I want to save them for the video here, but I'm not going to wait any longer. So I'm not going to show you how to tie. It's just those elastic strings. I'm just saying that you come along, if you see your plant starting to veer off like this away from the stake, then that's definitely a time to get in there and tie. I'll bring this up over here like this. I'll bring the branch in, and I will find like pretty close to the top, not quite the top, just maybe this node below it here, over here, about this spot, and I will put a tie there, again using elastic string or taping ribbon, whatever you like, just nothing constricting. Don't put string on or anything that's going to bind the plant. So anyway, that's about all. I'll go about my business of tying all of these plants up. They're all in a state of need on that and I will go through and do my final cutting on the bottoms. I make sure I get about 8 to 12 inches, as close to the bottom node of the bottom cluster of fruit as possible, but not necessarily right up to that spot. And I'll keep thinning out again, just keep getting those suckers out and tapping the heads of the flowers. So that will be, you know, about 15-20 minutes of my day here with the tomatoes, and after that it should be good for another week. Well, there you go. Everything's been nicely tied up, suckered, and the flowers have all been tapped for pollination, and all the bottoms are cleaned up here. I'm going to show you, hopefully this kind of comes through. See how much air and space there is at the bottom of all of these. Let's see if I can get a little closer into the bottom, but you see there, if we hold it back a little bit, see how much room there is at the bottom. And that's kind of the effect that you want. You want enough green at the top, of course. You don't want to trim away everything off the plant, but you want those bottoms, the bottoms of the rows, to be nice and airy. A lot of room down there. Keep the leaves off the ground. It's hard to see with these radishes in the way, but I hope that it kind of comes across what we're looking for. Something that's got a lot of air at the bottom. Good amount of plant at the top, but those bottoms are cleaned up just about to the point of the bottom cluster of tomatoes. You can play with that a little bit. It's not a hard and fast rule, just a guideline. But this is predominantly the look you're looking for. That kind of air and space at the bottom. That's the thing that you're going for to ensure that you don't get too much overcrowding or blight, and it's easy to keep the plants clean. Hope these are helpful to you, and happy gardening.